DraftKings contributor Garion Thorne and RotoWire's Nick Whalen, who are not wearing matching outfits. Just a 4-game slate. So who are you building around at center, Garion?
I'm going to start with someone who's probably going to be pretty chalky on a slate this small, considering we just saw him in this matchup 2 days ago. But Andre Drummond is probably in too good a spot to ignore tonight. He's played Cleveland twice this season. He's scored 61.5 DraftKings points in his last game and 58.5 DraftKings points in the first game. And it makes sense. Cleveland, among all NBA teams, has surrendered the most opponent-made field goals per game in the restricted area at 20.9 per contest. They can just not stop interior post play. They cannot. They're a relatively good rebounding team, but still Drummond is such a good rebounder. You don't necessarily have to worry about that from a matchup perspective. I think at 10-2, like I said, he's going to be chalk, but I think he's necessary chalk tonight in what is a fantastic matchup.
All right. Well, Nick, what about you? Who are you building around at center?
I like Drummond as well, but I'll make a case for Clint Capella. I think on a limited slate like this, with Joel Embiid out and Karl Anthony Towns most likely out given his recent run here, the options are few. But I do like Capella going up against OKC. You get him at 7,500. That's a little bit of a discount compared to his last price of 7,800. 58.5 DraftKings points in his last game, 59.5 the game before that. He goes up against an OKC team that's a little bit below average on defense, and then they're just at the end of the bottom 10 in terms of defensive rebounding rate. So, I mean, with Capella, he's scored better this year. He's had more opportunities to put the ball in the hoop. But for me, with him, like, you're always just hoping he gets to 10 to 15, if not more, rebounds. And I think this could be one of those nights.
Okay, how about at forward here, Nick?
I'm leaning Robert Covington. The forward spot to me was a little bit iffy as well, a little bit like center. I'm a little higher on some of the guards on this slate, but 5,700 for a guy in Covington who's been easily over 30 minutes every single night, and one of the guys who's kind of helped make up for the production that they're losing with Karl Anthony Towns. He's got at least 30 DraftKings points in 6 of his last 7. We know this Portland defense is not good. He might be matched up with Carmelo Anthony for a lot of the night. Not a guy with a super high ceiling, but someone who's had a really high floor of late.
Gary, and what about you? Your building block at forward, please.
Very similar approach in terms of aiming for someone with an exceedingly high floor. Al Horford for the season obviously hasn't had the results most people would have expected or would have wanted if you've been owning him in DFS. But at the end of the day, he's still averaging 30 DraftKings points per game, which is exactly 5x value at his $6,000 salary this evening. And that's something he's managed playing alongside Joel Embiid for the majority of the season. And his numbers are staggering when he gets the opportunity to not have to play with Embiid, which he will be able to do tonight. He's only averaging 0.63 DraftKings points per minute when he's playing with Embiid. That number jumps up to 1.13 DraftKings points per minute when he doesn't have to play alongside another center. So I just think he's someone who's almost locked in at 5x value tonight, considering the opportunity he gets with no Embiid and also just the minutes volume he's locked into every single night.
All right, take us to the guards, Garion.
Kemba Walker is really cheap on this slate. He's only $6,500. It's the cheapest he's been all season long. And it's understandable, I guess, from a matchup perspective. Philadelphia is only allowed they've allowed the 5th fewest DraftKings points per game to opposing point guards. But at the same time, Kemba's had, some success against this Philadelphia team. The first game of the season was pretty rough, but he went off for 25 and 8 the last time these two teams met in mid-December. He is, for all intents and purposes, the fulcrum of the Celtics offense. He's averaging 1.23 DraftKings points per minute for the season. On a slate this small, where people might be scared off because of that matchup and because this is one of the lower total games on the slate, I just think taking advantage of Kemba's ceiling here could be a really nice spot.
All right, Nick.
Yeah, I love the Walker play at that price. I don't know if they're overcompensating for him coming back from the injury and getting kicked out last night. Who knows? But I'll go a little bit more expensive and make a case for Russell Westbrook at 8,400, back in OKC, of course, for the first time. I'm usually not a big narrative guy, especially when it comes to DFS. I think that can kind of lead you down some bad roads more often than not. But I think if there's one guy who you really kind of know will bring it in a situation like this, I think it's Russ. And, this isn't a vindictive homecoming or anything like that. He's not going to get booed. If anything, it'll be a welcoming atmosphere. But I think Westbrook really, really, really wants to play well in front of this Oklahoma City crowd. And you're getting him at somewhat of a discount. I mean, he was 9,600 just a few days ago. Again, he's at 8,400 tonight. He rested on Wednesday, so he should be in great shape for this one tonight. 39, 45, 47, 52 DraftKings points over his last 4 games. He had a few more 55 plus and a couple 60 plus DraftKings points efforts towards the end of December. A guy who's kind of been disappointing from a season-long perspective, maybe been disappointing in terms of wins and losses for the Rockets, but in terms of DFS, when you're not worried about some of the caveats in his game, Westbrook is still as valuable as ever on a lot of nights.
Nick, again, I know not a lot to choose from here, but let's say we're going to get a little weird. Give us a value building block.
Honestly, my brain immediately went to Sekou Doumbouya from Detroit, but he's already up over, I think, 5,500, so I'm not sure he even qualifies as a value. So I'll stick with that same game. I mean, this is basically a team of value plays against another team of value plays in the Cavs and the Pistons. I'll go Brandon Knight, someone whose name I never expected to say on this show this season, but no Dante Exum again tonight as he battles an illness for Cleveland. No Kevin Porter as he deals with that knee injury. So without those two guys in the lineup, Knight has played 23 and 24 minutes over the last 2 games. He's coming off of a 25.5 DraftKings point game against Detroit the other night. 13 points, 5 assists, 2 rebounds, 1 block in that game. There's a case to be made that Brandon Knight is the most competent guard on this team.
Okay, you targeting the same game here, Garion?
No, but I did have a similar thought.
Okay.
Even on Tuesday thinking, okay, if Exum's not playing and Porter's not playing, is Brandon Knight going to play 30 minutes? Didn't quite get there, got to 24, but I would agree that he's a very good value play. A little bit cheaper, and obviously someone who is not a high ceiling guy, but someone who, again, I like from a floor perspective. Kent Bazemore is $3,600 tonight. He's played 35 plus minutes in 2 of his last 3 games, and if he didn't get a double technical against the Raptors, he probably would have hit it in 3 consecutive games. Obviously, he's a very low usage player, as far and away the 5th option in their starting lineup for the Trailblazers, but it's, Houston's on this slate, so that game is always going to have the highest implied total, but I really do think there's a chance we hit a lot of points in this Minnesota-Portland game, and for someone who has that high a minutes floor at that cheap a price, I think it's a pretty safe bet to lock him in and see if he can hit 6 or 7x value.